Okay, we're going to start with Chapter 1, which covers the human body and orientation. This is just an overview of all the things that we're going to be talking about in anatomy and physiology. All right, some of the essential concepts: you have complementarity, structural organization, and homeostasis. And again, we'll be dealing with each of these throughout this chapter. All right, anatomy. We primarily do anatomy in lab. That is the study of the structure of body parts. Now, obviously, we still have to talk about them in lecture. Now, physiology is primarily handled in lecture. That's a study of the function of body parts. All right, so some topics for anatomy. You have gross anatomy, also called macroscopic. We can break that down into regional. You have systemic anatomy, looking at systems individually, like respiratory system, cardiovascular system. Surface anatomy. Surface anatomy is super cool. That's like your last lab in A&P 2, where we teach you how to feel on the surface for structures found below. Microscopic anatomy, looking at cytology, which is the study of cells, or histology, the study of tissues. Developmentally, we've got embryology. Topics for physiology: you have neurology, which is the study of the nervous system, cardiovascular, which is the heart and blood vessels, renal, which is your urinary system, and pulmonary is breathing. Now, why do we study anatomy and physiology together? Well, you have the principle of complementarity of structure and function, which means that the function is dependent on the structure. Okay, now we need to look at the levels of organization. How is your body organized? This is a real simple concept, but a lot of people miss it. So, you start off with the smallest things in our body are chemicals. Chemicals come together and make up cells. Two or more cells grouped together make up tissues. Two or more types of tissues make up organs. Two or more different organs make up organ systems. Two or more different organ systems make up an organism, which is you. All right, so here you can just see an illustration of, again, atoms and molecules are going to make cells. Cells are going to make tissues. Tissues make organs. Organs make organ systems. And organ systems make an organism. All right, so the major organ systems in A&P 1 are going to be the integumentary, skeletal, muscular, and nervous. For AP 2, you have endocrine, cardiovascular, lymphatic, respiratory, digestive, urinary, and reproductive. So integumentary is your skin. This is going to protect deep tissues from injury and synthesize vitamin D. For skeletal, this protects your organs, provides a framework for muscles. You're going to learn later on this is where your blood cells are made and you store minerals. For muscular, this maintains your posture, helps you produce heat, locomotion or movement. Nervous is your fast-acting control system of the body. This responds to stimuli and activates muscles and glands. So this would be like picking your hand above a hot stove. Endocrine system is slow-acting control system of the body. These are your hormones. Cardiovascular, this will help transport nutrients and waste. So this is your heart pumping the blood throughout your body. The lymphatic system returns leaked fluid to the blood and houses your immune system cells. The respiratory supplies blood with oxygen and gets rid of carbon dioxide. Digestive helps break down food into nutrients and eliminates indigestible food. The urinary system eliminates nitrogenous waste, which is nitrogen. We get nitrogen from our protein intake. This regulates water balance, or water volume, and blood pH. Reproductive, well, that's a production of offspring, more of you. Now, necessary life functions. You have to maintain boundaries. The internal environment has to be kept separate from the external environment. We can do that at a cellular level with every cell is surrounded by a semi-permeable membrane, meaning that it gets to pick and choose what it allows in and out of that cell. On a whole organism level, we have skin, which keeps an internal and external environment separate. Now, we also have to have movement. You got a lot of things moving. Muscles move, blood flows, that's movement, food through your digestive tract, urine through the urinary system. There's a lot of moving. Responsiveness. You have to have the ability to sense and respond to changes. So you have to know that if it's cold outside, you need to seek warmth, or vice versa. Digestion. You have to be able to break down food into the simple molecules. Metabolism. That's the sum of all chemical reactions in your body, especially the ones that are going to make energy. Excretion. That's getting rid of wasteful things like feces, urine, and carbon dioxide. Reproduction. You have that as an organismal level, making more of you, or at a cellular level. Okay, you have skin cells that slough off every day. Well, we have to reproduce and make new skin cells for you. And then you have to be able to grow. Survival needs. Well, we have to have nutrients. We get those through our diet. They provide us with energy and building blocks. We have to have oxygen, which is 20% of the air we breathe. Oxygen is needed for chemical reactions to make energy. Water. That's 60 to 80% of your body weight. Water is needed for chemical reactions, fluids secreted, and excreted. Okay, excretion is putting something wasteful outside the body. Secretion is putting something useful outside the body. So you secrete oil, you excrete sweat. Now, body temperature for chemical reactions, those have to be kept within a certain range. Okay, why do we worry about your body temperature? Because of this. If you get too high of a fever, that's a problem because protein synthesis stops, which is the production of protein. Okay, so what? You're not making proteins. Well, that's a big deal. I mean, you don't know yet because you're just getting started. But hemoglobin is probably one of the most important proteins in your body. This is what carries all the oxygen in your body. Your fever gets too high, you stop making hemoglobin, you stop carrying oxygen. What about too low with hypothermia? Well, then the temperature's too low, all your metabolic reactions stop. So then you stop making energy. Nothing in the body works without energy. Now, atmospheric pressure for gas exchange is important, meaning that there has to be oxygen available in the atmosphere. Homeostasis. Homeostasis is equilibrium. That's a constant internal environment regardless of what's happening on the outside. Everything in your body has to be kept within a homeostatic range. Some have big ranges, some have little ranges, but that's it, that you're only normal in that range. Now, you have to have a variable, a receptor, a control center, and an effector. Then we're going to talk about feedback mechanisms and homeostatic imbalances. Okay, so we can look at this chart, and it's a fine one. You see there's a stimulus receptor, blah, blah, blah. Let's go on to the next picture. I like it better. Okay, so we have the balance beam in the middle. That means that you are in homeostasis. When it tilts, that means you're in an imbalance. All right, so let's do the top half first. Here, the stimulus is your body temperature is rising. So you had to have a receptor in the body that picked up that stimulus, that understood that your temperature was getting higher. So you had a receptor, picked up the increasing temperature, that sent a signal to the control center, which is your brain. And your brain then decides what to do. It sends that out via a signal to the effector, which is whatever's going to be affected. In this instance, it turned on your sweat glands and you started to sweat. That reduced your heat and you were brought back into balance. What about the other side? Okay, now on the bottom part of this, the stimulus is your body temperature is falling. So again, you had to have a receptor that picked up that change in temperature. The signal was carried to the control center or the brain. The brain decided what to do. It's going to cause your skeletal muscles to shiver. That shivering or contracting generates heat. That's the effector. Now, feedback mechanisms. This is how we control homeostasis. You have negative feedback. This is where you oppose the initial change. This prevents sudden severe changes in the body. All right, so we just did one with temperature. Remember how the temperature got elevated and then we started sweating, and so it dropped back down. That's negative feedback. I'm going to show you a picture on the next slide that's doing another example of negative feedback with insulin and glucagon. All right, positive feedback is where the variable changes in the same direction, thus intensifying that initial change. Okay, this controls infrequent events, so not very common. First one, you've got labor contractions. All right, in labor contractions, you're about to have the baby. Okay, what happens is your body starts producing oxytocin, which is a hormone that causes your uterus to contract, which is labor. As soon as you start producing mass amounts of oxytocin, you're no longer in homeostasis, because that's not normal for your body to have high levels of oxytocin. But instead of doing a negative feedback where you would stop releasing oxytocin, you're going to do a positive feedback. You're just going to start releasing more and more oxytocin so that you can get stronger and stronger labor contractions and hurry up and get the kid out. Now, you also have platelet plug formation. I'll show you that one on a picture in a minute. All right, here is the negative feedback example. You have insulin and glucagon. So we'll start again with the top picture. Here, you've just eaten, so you've got lots of sugar in your bloodstream. Your pancreas is going to release the hormone insulin that moves the sugar out of the bloodstream and into either your tissue cells, or will convert it to glycogen and store it. By insulin being released and moving that sugar out of the bloodstream, that brings you back into balance. Okay, so what was the imbalance? Okay, you were started off at normal, but then you started eating, and all that sugar started building up in your bloodstream. Too much sugar, you're in an imbalance. You release insulin, we move the sugar out of the bloodstream, you're back in homeostasis. Now, what's the other side? What if your blood sugar is dropping because you didn't eat? Well, now the pancreas is going to release a different hormone, glucagon. Glucagon is going to go to the liver where you stored glycogen earlier, and it's going to break it back down to sugar, glucose, release it in the bloodstream, thus elevating your blood sugar levels and bringing you back into homeostasis. So with both of these examples, again, this is negative feedback. We took an initial change, stopped it, reversed it, and brought you back into homeostasis. This is talking about platelet plug formation. This is a positive feedback. Say you cut an artery or some type of blood vessel. We'll say an artery. Okay, as soon as you do, you start producing more and more platelets. Platelets are used to clot your blood and prevent you from bleeding out. Okay, when you start producing all those platelets, you're in an imbalance. Your body isn't used to having all those extra platelets. But instead of stopping it and not making any more platelets, that would be a bad idea, right? Because then you would bleed out everywhere. So instead of stopping the initial change, you intensify it. You make more and more and more platelets until you've got the plug formed. A homeostatic imbalance, that's a disturbance in homeostasis. Often it results in a disease, and typically positive feedback mechanisms overwhelm negative feedback mechanisms. And this typically results from aging due to a loss of efficiency.